Hey! And look, I put lights up. So Laura, you told me that you would be asking me what my favorite video game is. I didn't play video games. I occasionally, when I was like 9, would go over to my friend Ziggy's house after school and would play Super Mario Bros. And eat Lunchables, which was like so rebellious for me because those were two things I was definitely not supposed to be doing. So yeah, I didn't play video games, but I guess like on the basis that it's like the only one I've played, I would say Super Mario Bros. Is my favorite video game. Today we will be talking about bonobos. So bonobos are these primates and they are very, very cool because they're like chimpanzees, but they're smaller. They're sometimes known as pygmy chimpanzees, and they're also just a lot better at existing. Because chimpanzees are a lot like humans, like unnervingly like humans. They have wars, they have gangs, they have fights, they're extremely patriarchal. They kill each other, they like hunt with spears, which is terrifying. I might talk about that in a different video. But bonobos don't do those things. They're a matriarchal society, and all they do is sit around all day and eat and have sex and are peaceful. So we should learn something from bonobos and just do that. Just noticed I do a lot of my videos from floors. Anyways, so bonobos, they're sharing. Evolutionarily speaking, that doesn't make a lot of sense because why would you share your sustenance and your food with something or someone else? Because then you just lose that and you would have less of a chance of passing your DNA on, which is like the entire point of living, scientifically. But yeah, these researchers at Duke set up 4 experiments and they took 15 wild-born bonobos that had been rescued from being illegally traded, and they took them and experimented. So in the first experiment, they set up one bonobo in a room with like bananas, and then they put clear plastic or clear glass to 2 other rooms, and they put like a friend bonobo and a strange bonobo in the 2 rooms. And they put like handles on the doors so the original bonobo could open them. And like 70% of the time, they would open the door to let out the stranger, and then the stranger would let out the friend of the original one. And that's really, really weird. Because 1, why would you share in the first place? 2, if you're gonna share, why are you sharing with the stranger and not the bonobo you know and like enjoy? So then they set up another experiment. So they put one bonobo in a room with bananas and then a stranger in one of the other rooms and nothing in the last room. And again, the bonobo would let out the stranger, and they just completely ignored the last door, which means that they weren't just opening doors for fun. Because, you know, that could have been a possibility, but they weren't. It turns out that these bonobos are just sharing with strangers, like, for a reason the researchers couldn't figure it out. They're like, why is this happening? So in the third experiment, they set up a bonobo on one side of a meshing, and then they had bananas, so there was bonobo, meshing, bananas, meshing, and a stranger bonobo. And with the original bonobo, they put a rope in there and showed that bonobo that rope would lift up the second set of meshing and let the stranger have access to the bananas. And 9 out of 10 of the bonobos allowed the stranger to go to the bananas, even though there was no food reward for them. I mean, they still got to like sniff the other bonobo and like pick its fleas and stuff, but they couldn't eat the bananas. And 9 out of 10 of them let the stranger eat the bananas, which is like, yeah, why? So then the researchers set up a 4th experiment in which they had a bonobo with like a rope to release mesh, and then glass, and then bananas, mesh, bonobo. And so this bonobo, none of those bonobos released the mesh to let the stranger eat the bananas. What the researchers think is the bonobos do all this sharing with strangers just to get to know them and expand their social circles. So when there was no reward of like sniffing and petting and picking the fleas off of the other bonobo, the first bonobo was like, why would I do that? I literally get nothing out of that. I don't get food, I don't get social interaction. So what's really interesting is these bonobos, first of all, they weren't doing this out of like altruistic like meanings or anything, because that's even a little weird for like humans, let alone bonobos, but they were doing this just for the social interaction. And that's something that humans don't do. We're kind to strangers, just not to that extent. Whenever we do good things, there's barely any time that it's entirely altruistic. Like, we always expect something in return. Say your friend Bob needs, like, a ride to the airport, and you give Bob a ride to the airport. You're like, oh, don't worry about it, like, I'm your friend, I'm gonna do that for you. But then, like, sometime later, Bob will be like, I don't want to lend you $5. You'd be like, Bob, I drove you to the airport that time. you gotta lend me $5. And so you're always gonna expect something in return, but these bonobos, they're not really doing that. All they're expecting in return is social interaction, which is so strange in nature because most animals and organisms just get through the world by destroying everything else. And bonobos are somehow doing it by just being friends with everything else, which is working for them. But like, oh man, okay, bonobos are awesome. If anyone wants to get me a pet bonobo, if Laura is sad, you bake her cookies. If I'm sad, I mean, cookies also work, but pet bonobo. Yep. That's the end of my nerding out about monkeys. Elizabeth, your question is, what is one of your favorite quotes from The Fault in Our Stars? Your Beatles fact of the week is Paul McCartney originally thought that he had plagiarized the melody for Yesterday. He went around for months asking people if they'd heard it, and no one had, and he went with the opening line of scrambled eggs, oh my baby, how I loved your legs. It was super classy. So yeah, bye! I found a pack of stroopwafels. My life just got better.